I actually spend more time as a writer than I do as a contractor these days, but I'm always nervous to go up to them and say, yeah, I'm a writer. So being an adult comes with a lot of responsibilities. When I first decided to become a writer and filmmaker, I was worried about how I'd provide for my family. Along the way, there's a lot of traps that snare common sense, and today, Darrell Dittmer disarms those worldly words of wisdom that keep us from truly succeeding.
No, that's a great question, and absolutely not. I was not convinced I had anything to give anybody else for a long time. In terms of my and I've helped a lot of people over the years for decades now, but I was never really convinced that, could I do this for a living? Could I write books? Could I do those sorts of things? So I come from the Midwest. I was born in Detroit, raised in southeastern Michigan, and my dad was a mechanic. It seemed like everybody's dad around that area worked for either GM, Ford, or Chrysler, and that was just kind of it. Or they were a farmer.
Right.
And so, we moved out to the country when I was young, and my dad put me in front of a farmer one day after church, and he said, "Can you put him to work?" And the farmer's like, "Yeah, I can put him to work." So that began my sort of Protestant work ethic. And I think I was, when he did that, I was 13, probably started working on farms when I was 14, and I was making $1.25 an hour, which was pretty sweet. But I worked a lot of hours, so I was pretty happy with my paychecks. I was like, wow, $1.25 an hour adds up. But anyway, so I asked my dad, I said, "Dad," and I think I was 15 at the time, I said, "Dad, I'd really love to get some work boots, and not have to, throw away socks and the shoes are terrible. You have to hose them off when you get home." And my dad, and I'm 15, my dad's like, "Well, yeah, you're working, go buy yourself some boots." And that was the answer at that point in my life, which helped me. I didn't like it then, and I don't know when I ended up getting boots, quite honestly. But that was the attitude with which I was raised. And then, and I'll keep this fairly short, but I got involved in drinking and drugs, and 13 years old, I took my first drink, and it was like the best thing ever, and I wanted to do it more, and it felt like it brought me to a place that I could cope and I could feel okay. But then obviously, as we all know, that's a slippery slope, and that's a difficult place to live your life from. And so I got involved in drugs, and I got involved in, petty criminal activity, all sorts of lying, cheating, stealing, whatever, all kinds of stuff. So that culminated at 18 years old. There was an intervention done, and basically I got into treatment in January 3rd of 1985. And December 31st of 1984, I was at a New Year's Eve party, and I want people to know how, you can go from your bottom to a very different place. And I don't care what it is in life, if you're frustrated or having problems with creativity or moving a project forward or whatever it is, drinking, drugs, other addictions, anything, you can get out of it and you can move through it. And so I was around, I don't know, I think it was a couple hundred people, but I was the most miserable, lonely, and depressed and just isolated that I had ever felt in my life. And I thought at that time, I'm like, would it just be better if I ended myself? And that's where I was at that time. 3 days later, I was in a treatment center, and then I decided that I wanted to change my life.
Knowing you need to change and knowing how to change can be two different hills to climb. Just like anything, though, knowing is half the battle, but doing the change requires something more.
I believe, and this is how it works for me, number one is I got to get sick and tired of myself. I got to get sick and tired of me being however it is that I am that I want to change. Because if I'm not sick and tired of it, I'm not going to have the courage to change it. And that's a really important component. And then the other thing is, and I think this is, well, the other couple of things, There's another word for humility that I love, and that word is teachable. I have to become teachable. I have to understand that I don't know all the answers, and I don't necessarily always know even what's next to do. And so, so is there a way for me to find out or slow down and listen and not deal with life from sort of that perspective? There are absolutely ways, and I've been fortunate to be able to find out a number of those ways, and I think that's where it starts. Number one, sick and tired of being sick and tired. Number two, allow myself to be teachable. And then if you're going to throw three in there, I guess I would, is sometimes I just have to summon the courage to do something differently. And because if I keep doing the same things and waiting for life outside of me to change, it's probably not going to change. The work that I need to do is work that needs to be done inside of me.
Oh, Alice in Wonderland, that guy must have been high the whole time. And then it's like, nah, I don't really think he was when he was writing that. But you get a lot of people who think the substance abuse thing is what drives their creativity. And I've always been a proponent of maybe it's the opposite, that's probably what's hurting your creativity. But I'm curious to know, and we can discuss this, we can take a look at it. But from your perspective, what is, I guess, because you've had the points where you've had the addictions there, but you've had times where you've been free from that. Let's talk a little bit about letting go and the creative freedoms that come with that. Because we know that a lot of this stuff that you went through is very destructive. It's very harmful to ourselves. Do you feel like you had more creativity before or after? How did that shape you?
Absolutely. So I believe that my I've heard this about recovering people, but also, people who maybe are older that are still practicing some sort of drinking or drugs, but that they are very hard workers and they're very creative and they're very just sort of different, than a normal human. And I can attest, I am different than a normal human, which is completely cool with me. But I'm able, and it comes to that expansion thing again for me. I'm able to expand, and some people might say, well, you can really expand when you do drugs, but how are you when you're not on the drugs? Like, how's your life when you're not on the drugs? And I feel like I can only do the work that I do from a creative perspective. And I write, newsletters and blogs and books and whatever. But I can only do those things when I have clarity, because clarity is what keeps those juices flowing for me. And it just sort of wells up in me where I know what to write and I know what's next. And I don't think I would have that if I was clouded with something between me and my work. If there was some kind of a drug or drinking or whatever, I think Ernest Hemingway, that's who I'm thinking of.
That's who I was thinking of, yeah.
Yeah, that's what popped into my mind. But if there's that thing between me and my work that's clouding me, I can't do effective work, at least for me. And I do believe that sort of as an in general statement. I feel like the clarity and the love for the work are the two things that fuel that creativity.
You don't need the fog to be creative. In fact, it sets you back considerably. What do you do when you feel inadequate to the challenge?
And I've been doing that for 6 months, and so I don't feel good about myself. All of those things go into the cloudiness. Those things contribute to the cloudiness. Sometimes, and I'm a big fan of the habits that we develop as we get older and get into adulthood and start feeling the stressors of life and all of those things that responsibility sort of puts in our lap. Can I find a way to quiet my mind a little bit? Can I find a way to quiet my heart? Is it meditation? Is it breath work? Is it walks in nature? Is it practicing gratitude? Is it, whatever can sort of keep this from going nuts? And because I have had it go nuts in my life, and it's been a long time since it's sort of been that unreeling, like the unraveling cassette tape, right? It's just like, whoa. I think the biggest mistake for me, and I'm a cowboy when it comes to jumping into things and just like, oh, I'll figure it out, no problem. And that's a really difficult place to be, especially if I don't understand the material. And so an artist, and I include myself in that, in whatever form, because of the things that I've done in my life. I know how to do the art stuff. I know how to write. I know how to, rehab the old home and make it cool and make it period and all that kind of stuff. I can do those things, but I don't know the best ways to do the business part of it. And so, I can do it for my own self-satisfaction, but at some point I'm going to run out of money because it costs money to continue to pursue, whether it's time that equates to money or money that I have to put into it to build it. And so understanding the business part of it is crucial, but a step further than that is surrounding myself to the degree that I can with people who have either done it before or understand the business of it, and taking their advice and allowing myself to be helped, because it's really easy. It's for me, big time. I can just go out there and go nuts and do stuff. Then I'm like, oh wait, I don't know how to do this. And so asking for that help and allowing that help, I think, is absolutely crucial, because I'm not, I wasn't born a business guy. I was born with, maybe some artistic talent, but I don't know the business, and I got to learn it.
So you're on a good path, Darrell, but tell me, because we've all got hard, what's the hardest?
That is a great question. And you know what? Here's one I never get asked, but I try to put it in there as much as I can. And I'd say, I spoke about it last night, but I as a guest on a podcast, but I haven't spoken about it in a long time. So I had a mentor when I was first getting involved in recovery and getting my head out of my derriere and all that sort of thing. And his name was Bud, and he was a great guy, and he was a very wise man. And he told me many, many things, but one of the most important things he told me was, and it sounds sort of biblical, but it's really not. He said, Darrell, first things first, and the rest will be added on. And basically what that means, and I've been noodling on that for, a long time after, but it means that the most important thing I can do, and the way that I can make myself valuable to me, to my relationships, to the rest of the world, is by improving me first. Because I think it's really easy to reach out and say, oh, I got to fix this person, I got to fix this situation, I got to fix that. And we don't reach back into ourselves and say, you know what, I can be better at that. And maybe if I'm better, that thing that I wanted to fix won't even bother me. And that has been the experience that I've had for quite some time now. And I think it's important for people to understand that message, that the work goes on in here. Everything out here is just plugging holes. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. It's not going to do much good. But when I work in here, it's absolutely real, and it's life-changing, and it's me changing, and that's truly what works.
Life is stressful. There's the mortgage, the kids, the job, and sometimes you might think you can't do what needs to be done. You tell yourself that even if one more feather falls on your head, you'll collapse with the rest of the weight of the world that's resting there already.
Oh, man. I've got like 40. I'll go with 2. So I think I'm reading a book right now that I haven't read in a long, long time, and for some reason it sort of pinged me. It's by M. Scott Peck, and it's called The Road Less Traveled, and it's a really cool book about discipline and responsibility and, you know, the things we've been talking about today. And the first 3 words of that book, I forgot this part, are life is difficult. And so my first piece of advice would be to understand that sometimes it's going to suck. And so I don't have to be surprised every time it sucks. I don't have to be surprised every time it's not easy, or, you know, the road isn't just sort of laid out in front of me. I have to do the work regardless of the difficulty. And I think that's a really important thing, because our entire existence, everything that we're sold, everything around us, social media, is promising us ease and comfort and convenience. And that's what we want. You know, I want to be able to call DoorDash. I want to be able to call Uber Eats. I want somebody to deliver my groceries. I just want it to be easy. And it's not. And especially in that kind of endeavor, understanding that it's not easy is absolutely crucial. And the second piece, I guess, is, and this was a difficult one for me to get my head around, but at some point I did, that when we run into the difficulties, understanding that it's going to pass. As long as I keep trying, the difficult time is going to pass. And that's the key. I have to keep trying. And that doesn't mean banging my head against the wall and, you know, running into the wall and all that sort of thing. That just means keep looking for options, keep exploring, keep staying open, keep trying to improve in some way. And that difficult spot, you'll get by it. And the other thing is, and this is very related to that, is when the good times come, which is related to the first point, those pass too. And another difficult time is going to show up. And the less I can be surprised about that and just try to take those things in stride, because they're going to keep coming up, the better I will be at withstanding. I have a tattoo on me, and I have a lot of tattoos on me, but this one on my arm, it's a tree with deep roots, and the roots are, I'd show it to you, but it wouldn't make a good picture. The roots are around a big rock, you know, and just well planted in the ground, and they're deep. And the saying is, when the roots are deep, there is no reason to fear the wind. And it's an old African proverb. And that's absolutely what this stuff takes, is building myself to the point where my roots are deep. And when those winds come, doesn't mean they don't suck, because they can, but it means I know that I'll get through them.
How deep do your roots go? Let's not focus on making our lives lighter. Rather, focus on making yourself stronger. Life as an adult can be hard, even more so if you've chosen to make a career out of art, but building relationships with others and yourself are what will see you through this. Don't forget to check out any of these other videos for more great perspectives on living an artistic lifestyle and hopefully avoiding these struggling artist traps. I'll see you next time.